And there in his car was Deontay James, shot dead and said to be a validated gang member. It is not known at this time if the incident is gang related, and of course it's being looked into by the police. The story about gangs is gaining steam today here in Chattanooga. There's an event tonight, and it will be one in which members of the public and the press and others, maybe members of the city council, will hear a presentation, perhaps like the one Josh May gave to teachers a couple days ago, and they will hear about gangs, why gangs are so attractive, how gangs make themselves, how they create their identity, where they find their recruits, what it is that gangs offer. There are said to be, in the story in the Time Free Press this morning, there are said to be 1,300 members of a validated members of a gang. And the main analysis by Josh May, Sergeant in the police department, is that there's a void and a vacuum in the home life of these young men, and of course some young women are connected with these clubs, we could call them. And in that, because there's no training in government, there's no training in how to govern yourself, there's no encouragement for a life of obedience to God, respect of other men and women, service to others, which many homes offer as sort of basic ideas of training by parents among their children. Because these homes don't have that, these young men and women are drawn to the connection, the affiliation of groups that have very unusual names. Now, I looked at TV9's website. There's a useful item published by Hannah Lawrence at TV9 on the 9th, and it's a copy of, I think maybe a screen grab of a computer that shows the police department gang validation form. And the thing that strikes me at looking at this document is that's signed by the officer and then signed also by a supervisor in the gang enforcement part of the department. What strikes me is that it seems very easy to be called a validated gang member, and there's some things which clearly are not significant, and they're rated 1 point. But if you, other signs are awarded 8 or 9 points, which means if you have that sign plus one other, you are considered a validated gang member. For example, something getting a single point in the count to 10 is wearing gang clothes or colors. Another one is having known contact with confirmed gang members. And of course, that accounts for the fact that these gang members live in neighborhoods. They may be going to school in the public school, and so people can have contact with them, and there's no that contact, and evidence of that contact is not viewed as telling as to your own convictions as a young person. Another one is being in a photograph of confirmed gang members. That's only 2 points. Another 1 pointer is possessing a gang-related magazine or publication. I'm not sure what those publications are like. I've not seen one, but possession of one is just a point. So that could be a publication, could be a photo on Facebook. That would be I'm not sure how you would call that possession, but participation in gang-related publication, that's suddenly 9 points. So if you're participating in the publication, whatever that might be, you are suddenly at 9 points. Now, another low-level activity that's not awarded much credit, much weight by the police department is against those who consistently observe contact with confirmed gang members. So one who is often seen with young men, that's just awarded 2 points, right? In evaluating a particular person. Possessing a gang document, that's 3 points. Use and possession of symbols and logos and colors, that's again a lower level proof of a connection. That's 3 points. But gang tattoos and brands, there suddenly you're really high if you have a gang tattoo on your skin. That's indelible, and so that's awarded 8 points. And then self-admission of gang involvement, that's 9 points. So there, if you say, well, I'm a member of the Crips or the grape juice boys, that you say that you are that counts against you in the ratings, if you will. So the higher, if you get 10 or above, you are validated. That you create your validity by these things. And of course, in the gangs, the loyal members want to have as high a score as possible, right? You want to get as many points as you can as soon as you can. And so that's because of affinity, the affinity and relationship that gang members have. Well, this is David Tulis, and I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time here. We are at Nooga Radio, and my program is every morning at 9. Thanks for tuning in for just a minute here. We cover local economy and the free market, and we argue that near is better than far, and that small is better than big, simple than complex. And down in the footnotes, there's a conflict too. And the conflict is this. There are people who are much better than me, much smarter than I, even though I have a bow tie, and who have doctorates and master's degrees. Okay, and they say that you're wrong. And even the good people, as I call them, say that corporate is better than personal, and they say that abstract is better than physical. But I argue against that. Okay, and so do you. You, my listener, I think you're, as we try to become Nooga-centric here, as we try to become more loco-centric and more thinking more in terms of local solutions to national problems that can't be fixed nationally, and they really can't be fixed here directly. We want to think in terms of Nooga-centrism. That is to say, Chattanooga is the center. We're here, by God's good providence, we're here, and we have work to do, and we need to be responsible for ourselves and our families. And then also, as we think about extending capital, that we are about giving capital away, right? We need to understand that there are, as in the Westminster Confession of Faith, for example, you have the reference drawn from the Bible of those who are your superiors, those who are your equals, and those who are your inferiors. And that's the Puritans who came here to this country in the 1600s lived out this understanding of the way God made the world. And so to your inferiors, you have a duty, right? Just as you have a duty to your superiors. And so our idea of local economy is that you, my listener, you're a superior person, and you have a duty to extend capital. You might say to extend grace to those who are inferior to you. Now, that's not inferior morally, that's not inferior legally, but it's inferior in your station. And here we have wealthy men creating a school for inner city boys. Okay, that's an example of localism, of saying we have problems here. The state won't solve our problems. The state, in fact, has created a grid making the solution impossible. So we are going to have our own solution. That's what we propose here at the David Tulis Show, and also at Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. And so, looking at the gang problem, as we are thinking of the pending burial of Deontay James, 23, who has a son. If you look at if you go to TV9, I think TV9's website, the reporter has photographs of the young man's son. He's 23 years old, has a son, maybe 3, it looks like. And I'm seeing this at Hannah Lawrence's posts at TV9. And we have this Death Tuesday, and we have conflict. Now, there's a conflict among gang members, but there's also a conflict between the gang members and the state. This is I'm been working on a proposal that I'm asking again for comment from among friends here in Chattanooga what they think about this idea. But the idea is to help find another way in which young men can have a stake in, you might say, the official economy, okay, or have a stake in the law, or have a stake in decency and morality. Now, I know those are kind of vague ideas, but the Christian church has probably the best tools to bring about a reformation in this conflict between gangs and the police, and among gangs themselves. Right, there's a great deal of animosity among gang members, as we read in Beth Berger's story in 2013 in the Times Free Press about Jamoki Jones, who perished in a shooting in a car. He was shot dead in a car that crashed, and the man who shot him got away, I think. And in this conflict, we have conflict among gang members, and then of course you have the conflict where gangs effectively are united, though they are disparate in their organization, and they're very lightly and personally organized. Right, these are not corporations, though they often function in that way. And their rival among them all is the police. And my interest, I think, is understanding why there needs to be a solution that's not a police solution. There is not a police solution to the gang problem. There just isn't, because of this conflict. And I go so far as to suggest that policing exacerbates the gang necessity, right? Policing, when you have necessity, it's an external threat, right? And necessity, when there's a necessity against you, an external threat against you, what do? Well, you arm up, right? You firm things up. You get cash, right? Whatever the necessity might be, you rouse yourself to meet it, right? You become tall. You become strong. You arm yourself with knowledge. You arm yourself with the weapon of the trade, let's say, or the weapon. Maybe it's a weapon, a real weapon. And so in this conflict, gangs have an outside threat, just as the American government continually has outside threats by which it has to maintain its authority, its premise of protecting the people from outside danger. And of course, North Korea is not a danger at all to the United States. Guam is not in danger from a missile from Pyongyang. It can't do anything. It's impotent to do anything. Even if the missile fired, it would never even, it wouldn't even get past, it wouldn't even re-enter. It would probably go haywire in space. How can a country that has 3 fax machines and no lights at night produce an ICBM? Well, it can't. But we're told in the media that Donald Trump is going to save us and that the military is going to save us and that we're in danger. Well, we're not in danger at all. But the reason national governments and nations do that is because their entire existence depends on the necessity of an external threat. They're continually creating external threats. And so gangs have the same dynamic. Our gang is a group of young men. We're involved in the drug trade. We sleep around. We guard our turf. We make sure we have the best weapons. We consume alcohol together. We consume weed together. We engage in some extortion, perhaps, maybe some prostitution. We strong arm our enemies, and we make ourselves noted. Right, we are strong and good men, and this is our neighborhood, and we're very lococentric. Right, that's what gang members. They're highly lococentric. They're highly connected with geography and neighborhoods. They're very in a lot of ways that we could learn from their geocentrism. About how to live, I'd suggest, but they're turf oriented, right? And as I argue that you, my listener, should be turf oriented. You should care about Chattanooga first, right? You should follow what happens at the mayor's office more intensely than you're following what's happening in Washington, right? What do you care about Washington for? Isn't what Mayor Burke does? Isn't what his agencies do? His Airbnb policy, his police department, aren't they more important than what President Trump says or what some congressman has to say, don't you think? Well, gangs have that down right. They're highly lococentric. They're highly localist and turf, land, space, building block oriented. And those are strong points. Right? Those are things for which we should compliment them. And so they are in their necessity united by the threat from outside, the external threat. Not of Korean nuclear missiles now, but of police officers and those officers who are assigned to harass them. And that is a policy mentioned repeatedly in the press, and it involves very, very close attention to these young men. Right? They are hunted, effectively hunted and surveyed, and the spy network, the spy system that the city is developing, is used primarily against them. And it's called focused deterrence. I'm trying to find the reference in today's paper, but I didn't mark it, so I'll just pass on. But just take my word for it. The policy since January has been assigning these extra officers who are hired, then bringing the police task force, the police department as a whole, to 500. These extra officers are fighting the gangs, as they say, and so the gangs have an internal need to fight the external threat. And on that point, I'd like to suggest that is why policing of gangs exacerbates the problem. and because they are victimized, right? You're a victim. You've been oppressed, and these young men don't know how to say no, right? I think they say yes to a lot of bad habits, no doubt, but and they should, to which they should say no. But when it comes to police officers, I think they don't know their rights, and they don't know how to deal legally about these police officers that are assigned to harass them, right? Assigned to constantly monitor them, to see where they are, to watch where they're going, to catch them, making a left turn without an indicator, right? And so you can have probable cause to stop. Well, here is a problem that I want to get back to my point about investing in law. How do we get gang members to care about the status quo, to care about making a living, as you do, my listener, in legitimate, legal ways? And we have a call, and caller, you're live on the air with David Tulis. What's on your mind?
I couldn't disagree with you more, David. 90% right with the gang stuff. They're a bunch of thugs and punks. I mean, you weren't in a gang when you were young. I was. They're thugs and punks. And I can't help that their mommy and daddies weren't there. And Democrats caused the Great Society and caused the ruination of people. But, I mean, the police, the job of the police is to arrest people when they do bad things, not to be community advisors. And these are bad people that shoot little kids. Hey, we want to coddle these people. They need to be thrown in jail for a very long time. They commit murder, either executed or the rest of their lives. That's the solution. The solution is, first of all, we need to get drugs off the street. So we need to execute drug dealers. And that means everyone from judges to anyone pushing drugs. And secondly, any thug on the street that carries a gun that kills little kids needs to be taken off. We need police to sweep these areas. We need them to sweep them, do pat downs, and arrest anyone with illegal weapons and that has the intent to hurt another person. That's the only thing that's going to solve the problem. I mean, listen, you got a bunch of cockroaches. When you turn on your light in the kitchen at 3 a.m, there's a bunch of cockroaches running around. What are you going to do? Give them food? You got to step on them. You got to squash them. Thanks.
Mike, I appreciate that. And that is a point on which we have butted heads before. And my argument is in that direction too. But I always haven't viewed the law and the constitutional rights of those who are seized and held by the police. Okay, the police have to operate according to the law. They can't touch anybody. They can't accost anybody, stop anybody unless they have probable cause or a warrant for the individual or a warrant to search a particular named property for something that is sworn to be by oath to be illicit or illegal or the fruit of a crime in a particular property, whether it's a car or a house. And then the police, once they're empowered to act, then they should act. But I think the policing dynamic is not always legal. Okay, it's often personal. You have personalities of officers such as Josh May, who deals with gang members a great deal, and many of his colleagues. And they much is just personal. It's not. These are not legal people anymore. They're acting effectively in their personal capacity, not as agents of the state, which they have been customarily been acting as. And getting away from their role. Their role is law enforcement, right? That's their custom, their duty. I'm not sure if they have statutory authority to enforce statute in the city limits, but let's just say that they do. That has been raised as a question. Let's assume that they do have that authority. They can't, by their lawful actions, stop the gang problem, and they can't reduce the gang numbers. They can't make gangs less attractive. That work has to be done elsewhere. And not by people wearing guns, not by people who have a job to find probable cause against you, right? That work has to be done, I would say, by the diaconate. The diaconate is the Christian church and men who believe in God, who believe in his law, and who are living out the concepts of grace. They, in continuing regular friendly interactions with these young men, they can persuade them that there's a better way. And that is to say, in service to others, right? Turning their orientation away from themselves, away from the coming weekend, right? The short-term perspective, turning these young men away from the short-term pleasures and thrills to a longer-term building of what I would say would be a business or a family. Those are the places where men prosper, where they are civilized. And that's not a work for policing. Policing can't bring that about. This is David Tulis. I do thank you for joining me.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio.